The story of Israel versus the Canaanites, recorded in Judges chapter 1, is more than a historical account. It is a mirror for our own lives, reflecting both the heights of faithfulness and the pitfalls of human weakness. As we journey through this passage, let us open our hearts to what God is saying, not just about battles fought long ago, but about the struggle for faith and obedience that continues with every generation. Before we continue, just a reminder to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell. By doing so, you'll stay connected and up to date with future content. Now, let's continue delving into Judges chapter 1 and the message God has in store for us. Judges. Chapter 1 ushers us into a critical phase of Israel's history. The 12 tribes at last stand in the land promised to them by God, but their work is not yet done. Under Joshua, the Israelites had made significant progress against the Canaanite inhabitants, yet full possession and faithful obedience would test the generations who followed. This chapter chronicles the attempts of 9 of the 12 tribes to drive out the Canaanite nations and claim the inheritance God had given them. The question at hand: would they demonstrate the brave faith befitting the people of God? From the very beginning, the focus narrows to 2 tribes, Judah and Simeon. We find them taking initiative, seeking God's guidance before setting out to conquer the remaining territories. The Israelites' first response is admirable. After the death of Joshua, the Israelites asked the Lord, "Who of us is to go up first to fight against the Canaanites?" The Lord responds with clarity in Judges chapter 1 verse 2, declaring, "Judah shall go up, I have given the land into their hands." God's promise is not vague or uncertain. It is direct and powerful. The land is already given, if only they will trust and obey. Judah and Simeon's initial ventures are marked by obedience and success. They unite, conquering key cities, and the Lord grants them victory after victory. Yet, woven into their narrative is a subtle complication. Even in their zeal, they choose to rely not solely on God, but to partner with their fellow tribe, Simeon, perhaps hedging their bets. While not overtly disobedient, it shows a subtle shift in trust. More telling still, as the chapter progresses, their confidence begins to falter. Despite early victories, they hesitate in the face of formidable foes, iron chariots, the superweapons of their day, forgetting that God's power far exceeds any earthly defense. Amid the grand sweep of tribal struggle, the spotlight settles on a single family, that of Caleb. Caleb stands as a remarkable example of unwavering faith. He was one of only 2 men who, some 40 years prior, had trusted God enough to declare, "We can take the land," when all around him saw only giants. Because of their faith, both Caleb and Joshua were the only men of their generation allowed by God to enter the promised land. Caleb's faith didn't fade with time. It inspired his family. In Judges chapter 1 verses 12 to 15, Caleb makes a bold offer. "I will give my daughter Acsah in marriage to the man who attacks and captures Kiriath Sefer." His nephew Othniel answers the challenge, demonstrating courage and reliance on God, and he receives Acsah as his wife. Acsah herself embodies wisdom and initiative. Not content with a meager inheritance, she urges Othniel to ask her father for additional fields. After she marries, she appeals to Caleb again for springs of water to sustain the land, and her father graciously grants her request. Through both risk-taking faith and bold, trusting requests, Caleb's family models an eagerness to claim every blessing God is willing to offer. Next, we are introduced to the Kenites, descendants of Moses' father-in-law, a group with foreign blood, but with hearts eager to join God's people. Judges chapter 1 verse 16 shows them moving into the land alongside Judah, aligning themselves with God's promise and God's people. This act demonstrates a willingness to leave behind old ties and former securities, seeking instead the fullness of life under God's hand. Imagine Caleb's family in your own spiritual community. Their faith would be contagious. Their stories would inspire bold steps of obedience. They would challenge the church not to settle for the status quo, but to pursue God's promises with tenacity, generosity, and vision. Their trust would not just be passive belief, it would be active, expectant, willing to take risks for the sake of obeying God. But alongside these stories of faith, Judges chapter 1 is candid about the flaws and failures that persist. After Judah's early victories, we come to a troubling note. Judges chapter 1 verse 19 states, "The Lord was with the men of Judah. They took possession of the hill country, but they were unable to drive the people from the plains, because they had chariots fitted with iron." This raises a perplexing question. If the Lord was with them, why were they unable? God had already promised the land. Their inability was not physical, but spiritual. Faced with overwhelming odds, they weighed the evidence in human terms and found the challenge too great. They said, "We cannot," not because God's promises had failed, but because common sense outweighed faith. This pattern repeats itself among the other tribes. Again and again we read that they could not or did not drive out the inhabitants from their allotted lands. Sometimes it was fear, sometimes it was compromise, sometimes it was a straightforward lack of obedience. Through it all, the real issue emerges. It is not our lack of strength, but our lack of faith in God's strength that prevents us from fully entering into His blessings. So where does this leave us today? The answer is both challenging and hopeful. The obstacles we face, whether external circumstances, daunting tasks, or habitual sins, are not insurmountable when God is with us. But when we rely only on ourselves, or shrink back because of what we see with our eyes, we forfeit the victories He intends. Is there a place in your life right now where, like Judah, you are saying, "I can't," when God has already declared, "I will"? Are you tempted to calculate the odds based on your own resources, or are you willing to step out in promise, trusting obedience? God does not ask us to be fearless. He asks us to bring our fears to Him and to trust that the very power which conquered giants and toppled walls is at work in us today. As you reflect on Judges chapter 1, may you be inspired by the bold faith of Caleb's family and the wholehearted commitment of the Kenites. May you be honest about areas where you are tempted to settle for less than God's best. And above all, may you remember that it is not your strength that matters most, but your faith in the one whose power truly knows no limits. If this message resonates with you, take a moment to praise our Lord. Type, "Glory to Yahweh," in the comments as a declaration of praise and glory to our Father for His infinite love, mercy, and patience for us. God bless you.